Justin stared in disbelief at his computer screen. A sense of dread washed over him, making him feel dizzy and sick. It was impossible for him to process what he was seeing. It felt like his whole world was crashing down. No way. This can't be real. He clicked on picture after picture, each one more shocking than the last. They all pointed to one thing he had been deceived and made a fool of, but each image unveiled new details. He saw smiles and laughter, a woman who seemed happier than she'd been in a long time. But there was more to this story. It was more than just a cheating partner. Justin's entire world was falling apart. In just a week, he had lost all direction and support. The two people he thought he could rely on had let him down in the worst way. He had never felt more alone. How could she do this to him? And how could he do this? Ever had a string of bad luck that made it seem like the world was conspiring against you? Everyone has bad days, and it's normal for things to go wrong. But when everything goes wrong for weeks, the weight of it can feel overwhelming. It's even worse when it all happens unexpectedly. Success can sometimes be a double-edged sword. It's hard to believe, but too much success can be problematic. It can make people complacent and take things for granted. When everything goes right for so long, it's easy to forget how to handle failure. As Game of Thrones famously said, winter is coming for us all. No matter how smart, talented, or successful someone is, they can't escape the challenges life throws at them. When the snow falls, you either face the cold and survive, or you crumble. For Justin, the transition from summer to winter seemed to happen overnight. But the truth was that things had been unraveling for a while. He just hadn't noticed until it was too late. Justin worked as a project manager for a prominent contract company that handled various city projects. From planning new buildings to developing downtown areas, his company did it all. Justin led a team of 12 and managed every aspect of their projects. Once the plans were in place, he assigned different tasks to other team members like construction crews, engineers, and inspectors. The project remained his responsibility until it was completed. He and his team had to deal with any issues that arose along the way. Justin couldn't take sick days or mental health breaks. He was always on call. Vacations were only allowed once a project was finished. Being in charge had its perks. When things went well, people showered him with praise and gratitude. However, there was also a downside to being the boss. Justin's troubles began almost a year ago when two of his teammates, Hannah and Chris, started dating. Chris was a new addition to the team, having joined just 2 months prior. Hannah had been with the team from the beginning. Justin had hired Hannah right out of grad school, impressed by her intelligence and abilities. She was one of the smartest people he had ever met, and she quickly proved herself to be an invaluable asset to the team. Her skills and insights played a significant role in their success. In no time, Hannah knew more about their work than Justin himself. She was the driving force behind their achievements. While Justin built a team around them, Hannah became his right-hand person. In reality, Hannah could have led her own team. She didn't need Justin's guidance. The only reason she didn't was because of one important fact: Justin was a leader. He knew how to bring people together, how to motivate them. He treated his team as individuals, not just workers. He fought for their well-being, defending them when things went wrong. Justin cared deeply about his team, and together, they achieved remarkable results. They were the most successful team in the company by a large margin. But that success wouldn't last forever. Let's go back to Hannah and Chris. Despite her intelligence, Hannah was quite inexperienced when it came to relationships. Her life was organized and efficient, and she expected love to work the same way. You find someone who fits your criteria, get to know them, adapt to each other's lives, and always keep your goals in mind. But love isn't that simple. It takes two people who want the same things and are on the same page. Relationships don't have guidelines or policies to determine right from wrong. It's a different ballgame altogether. Chris checked all of Hannah's boxes. She assumed she checked all of his as well. She was attractive, smart, funny, and driven. She was the perfect package, someone she would date if she were a guy. But Chris was used to attention from women. He was good-looking and came from a privileged background. For him, there was no the one. There was just the present moment, always looking for something better. He was young, successful, and had endless opportunities. Chris was what some would call a player. Here's how their story went. Hannah pursued Chris because she wanted to date him. He saw her as an attractive woman he wanted to be with, so he reciprocated her advances. Just 2 months after Chris joined the team, they started dating. But their definitions of dating varied. To Chris, dating meant spending time together, having fun, and then going back to their separate lives. They were individuals still enjoying their own freedoms. For Hannah, dating meant more. It meant commitment and being a team. She saw it as a partnership where they had each other's backs. While Chris was involved with Hannah, he was also involved with other women. He had a girlfriend not Hannah, an FWB girlfriend also not Hannah, a married mother he met at a club, and someone he found on a dating app. When all of this came out, emotions exploded and the team was divided. Some supported Hannah while others sided with Chris. Now, Justin faced a problem. He didn't like getting involved in his teammates' personal lives, but he had warned Hannah about Chris. He had seen similar situations before. Chris wasn't a bad person, he just wasn't ready for commitment. Justin was always there to offer advice and help, but he never took sides. However, he cared about Hannah and had mentored her from the start. He couldn't help but feel responsible for what had happened. After their difficult breakup, Hannah was left heartbroken and unsure of how to move on. She felt a mix of anger, bitterness, and sadness. Seeing Chris at the office, laughing and joking as if nothing had changed, only intensified her pain. It felt like he didn't care about her or her feelings anymore. Even Justin, her close friend and colleague, didn't seem to understand the depth of her emotions. As time went on, Hannah couldn't handle working with Chris any longer. She decided to take action and try to get him fired by pointing out all of his mistakes. At first, she was subtle about it, but eventually her actions became too obvious and people started to notice. However, instead of sympathizing with her, her teammates began to view her as the ex-girlfriend who couldn't let go. This made them side with Chris even more. Frustrated and desperate, Hannah turned to Justin for help. With tears in her eyes, she pleaded with him to fire Chris. She reminded him of her loyalty, how she had always supported him, and how she would do anything for the team. She hoped he would understand her heartbreak and do something for her. Unfortunately, Justin couldn't fulfill her request. If he fired Chris for his behavior, he would also have to let Hannah go because they had violated the company's rules against dating coworkers. Firing Chris would leave them vulnerable to a huge lawsuit. Moreover, Justin believed that Hannah was overreacting. Breakups happened all the time, and their relationship hadn't even lasted long. Justin's dismissive attitude towards her pain only made Hannah feel more hurt and betrayed. She had expected him to have her back, just as she always had his. Feeling heartbroken and disillusioned with men in general, Hannah made a drastic decision. She wrote her resignation letter and handed in her 2-week notice to Justin. Before Justin had a chance to process what was happening, Hannah had already taken her vacation days and left for some time off. She had blocked all communication from him and the rest of her coworkers, except for emails, which she didn't seem to be reading. Justin felt devastated by her departure. Not only was he hurt by her abandonment, but he also realized the immense problem he faced in replacing Hannah's irreplaceable role on the team. Her absence came at the worst possible time, in the middle of a crucial project worth millions of dollars. Through a series of unfortunate events, things started going wrong with the project. Zoning issues, strikes, land disputes, delayed deliveries, and contract renegotiations all added to the mounting stress. Justin had hoped that with some minor adjustments, he could handle the project until Hannah returned. However, her sudden departure made this nearly impossible. Chris, despite his Ivy League education, couldn't match Hannah's level of talent and dedication. The pressure was on for Justin to navigate the challenges and keep the project moving forward. The future of the company and his team depended on it. If he made any mistakes, the consequences could be devastating, leading to lawsuits and the disbanding of the team. Worst thing about the entire scenario was looking at Chris every day and trying not to see a massive disaster who cost him his best worker. As smart as Chris was, he didn't hold a candle to Hannah. He wasn't as hardworking or loyal. He didn't have the same relationship with the contractors that Hannah spent years building. He didn't have the experience to foresee potential challenges. He just wasn't Hannah. No one was. Now maybe Hannah planned her exit for maximum damage, or maybe it was just bad timing for Justin. With a planner and executor like her, it's more likely she knew what she was leaving him with. And for a regular person, this would be enough vindication to make them sit back and smile. But not Hannah. She had one last screw you to dump on him, and it was much worse. A month earlier, Justin sat on the edge of the bed and looked over at his wife, Rochelle. She was standing in front of the big mirror over her vanity, putting on her makeup as she got ready for work. "You're going out of town again?" What's that? Like the fifth time this year. It's only July. Your company has never sent you out of town this many times before. And now you're going to be gone for 2 weeks? Rochelle was irritatingly calm as she applied her lipstick. Looking at her husband via the reflection in the mirror, she said, "It's a conference, Justin. People from all over are going to be there. But for 2 weeks? That seems a bit excessive." Her forehead furrowed with annoyance as she stopped applying her makeup. Still looking through the mirror, she said, "I know you're not complaining about how much time I'm spending at work. You practically live in your office. Yeah, but I come home every night." That got a snorted chuckle from her. "Really? You think walking in the door at 9 is coming home every night? That I should be grateful to you for at least sleeping next to me? Which is all we do these days, by the way. We literally sleep together. Ro, you know things get crazy when I have a project. This one is particularly stressful. The team has been working overtime."
Right.
Rochelle said as she finally turned around and looked straight at him. The team. She used her fingers as air quotes when she said the team. Then she sarcastically continued with, "Well, it's a good thing you have Hannah to help you handle your stress." Justin let out a long, exasperated breath. "Really? We going here again? I'm just saying." Justin shook his head like he couldn't believe he had to keep repeating this. "How many times do we have to have this same discussion? For the last time, there is nothing going on between me and Hannah." Sure, she said with a cynical nod. "Nothing at all. It's completely normal for a husband to spend 12 hours a day with another woman, then come home to his wife and not want to even hold her." There was so much wrong with that sentence that Justin didn't even know where to begin. The last thing he said came from a place of vulnerability that Rochelle could connect with. She saw it in his eyes. She rarely saw that from him these days, partly because he always felt like he had to defend himself from accusations. Her eyes softened, her snarl turned into a sad frown. In a voice that was playfully whiny, she said, "But you don't share anything with me, Justin." "Yes, I do." "No, you don't," she said seriously. "You don't tell me how your day went so I can comfort you. We don't eat together unless I remind you. You definitely don't spend quality time with me. I get nothing from you. Hannah gets to see you all day, every day, and all I get is a couple hours a night. That's including you hopping in the shower right after you get home." Ro, she walked up to him and gently grabbed his face with both hands. "Babe, I would love to just sit next to you and watch TV, or take a bath together, or even sit in the same room and read a book. I don't care what we do. I just want to be around you more. I would love those things too," Justin said, smiling at the serene vision his wife gave him. "And one day we will. I promise. We're going to do more than just sleep together." She laughed a little at that, but then her face once again turned sad. When do I get my husband back? You already have him. He's just busy, that's all?" "Well, can he get less busy?" she said with a cute pout. "What do you mean?" She stopped hugging him and looked into his eyes. With a mischievous grin, she said, "I'm up for a sick day. How about you?" Justin was tempted beyond belief. The thought of spending the entire day doing fun activities with his gorgeous wife was enough to almost make him consider it. Almost. And then, his phone rang. Both sets of eyes traced back to the infuriating device that was sitting face up on the bed. Both of them saw the name that lit up his screen in big, bold letters. Hannah. Justin's mind flooded him with all the things he had on his agenda to do today. He had meetings. He had conference calls. He had things he needed to take care of. As much fun as playing hooky would be, it would cost him so much and put him behind. He grabbed her hands as they finally got his buckle loose. Bringing them up to his face, he hugged them but said, "I can't row. Not today. I'm sorry." Her face changed. It became contorted with anger and disbelief. Here she was throwing herself at him, and all he could do was think about rushing back to the office to be with another person. "Right," she said, snatching her hands from his grip. "Well, let me know when you're not too busy for me. Hopefully I'll still be here." "Babe, you're going to be late for work. And so am I." "Excuse me," she said as she walked away from him towards their large walk-in closet. As she was stepping into her dress shoes, Justin appeared in the doorway. "What did you mean by hopefully I'll still be here?" he asked, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. All he got was a smirk from her before she bent down to adjust her shoes. Then she lightly pushed past him and walked out. As she left, she said, "Say hi to Hannah for me." This argument was almost like a normal form of communication at this point. For some reason, Rochelle could not shake the fear that her husband preferred the company of another person, this person to be exact. Hannah was a powerful force, probably one of the most naturally gifted people she'd ever seen. Rochelle couldn't help but be envious of her. What scared her the most was the fact that Hannah could probably do anything she wanted, but instead chose to be a sidekick to her husband. Hannah would succeed anywhere. She could lead her own team, or simply work anywhere else and excel. Justin always spoke highly of her, and these were words from his own mouth. And it wasn't like she lacked confidence and didn't realize this. In fact, Hannah was so sure of herself that it didn't even seem like confidence. Her being the best at whatever she did was more like a statement of fact. So why? Why would a person choose to stay beneath someone else when they have everything it takes to make it on their own? What would make a person put aside their own ambitions to make another person shine? Loyalty? Respect? Or was it something more like love? Honestly, Rochelle believed Justin when he said that he and Hannah weren't having an affair. But there are bigger dangers to a marriage than simply being involved with another person. Building a deep connection with someone else is something even more concerning. Truthfully, it would actually be better if Justin were just spending time with Hannah as friends. Using her as a support system was far less frightening than the two of them working late hours together because they enjoyed each other's company. The thought of Justin spending so much time at the office because he just liked being around Hannah more than his wife was unbearable. It drove her insane with jealousy. Present-day Justin fell back into his chair as if all the energy had left his body. It had been an extremely long day, and he had an even longer one scheduled for tomorrow. He glanced at the clock only to realize it was already 9 at night. Rochelle is going to be upset, he thought. But then he remembered that she was away at that conference, the one that lasted 2 weeks. She had already been gone for a week. He hated to admit it, but it was somewhat relaxing to have his wife away. He loved her more than anything. But it was exhausting to constantly defend the amount of time he spent at work. He was passionate about his job, he excelled at it, and he wanted to succeed. He wasn't a regular 9-to-5 person. He didn't leave his work troubles at the office. He was driven to be more than just an average worker. That was one of the traits that attracted Rochelle to him in the first place. She loved how passionate he was about his career. Made him interesting. It's just ironic how, after 5 years of marriage, it's the very thing that causes the most arguments between them. As he slouched in his chair, his laptop buzzed, capturing his attention. He glanced at the lit-up screen, and what he saw made him do a double take. He quickly leaned forward to get a closer look. It was an email from Hannah. Justin had to calm himself down before he clicked it open. He couldn't help wondering if his concerns were about to be addressed, and if he was going to reconnect with Hannah. Lord knows he needed her. What he read left him somewhat confused. Justin, I've known you for many years now. We've worked side by side and accomplished many great things. You recruited me right after grad school, and I have been by your side ever since. I was there for you. Before Rochelle, before the success, before the money, I was there. I'm hurt that you couldn't understand how much Chris hurt me. You know how difficult it is for me to have relationships because of how hard I work. You know how difficult it is for me to connect with people, because most of them end up being resentful of how driven I am. You know this because we are practically the same. I was at your wedding with Rochelle. I was so happy for you because I know how hard it is for people like us to connect. But I'm also looking for the same. Chris hurt me because he pretended to be that person for me. He made me believe we had that connection when in fact we didn't. I can't work next to someone who did that to me. I can't see him every day knowing that the connection I thought we had, he had with other people. How could you not understand that? We are the same. But maybe you will after you open the attachment to this email. Maybe you will feel what I felt. For the record, I'm truly sorry for this, but you have to know. I unblocked you, so call me when you're ready. We have a lot to talk about. Hannah. With that, Justin clicked on the attachment. What opened before him was life-changing. There were over a dozen pictures. It was his wife, only she wasn't alone. In every picture, there was a man with her. And by the looks of it, he wasn't a friend or a casual acquaintance. He was more than that. In some of the pictures, she was in a swimsuit, one that Justin had never seen before. Some of them had her wearing a cover-up over her swimwear, but in the ones without it, Justin could clearly see that her swimsuit was revealing. In other pictures, she was wearing a form-fitting dress. This series of pictures were taken in various settings. Some were in what appeared to be a nightclub, some at a restaurant. The nightclub ones showed her dancing closely with this mysterious man. The restaurant ones had her sitting across from him, smiling over a meal and a drink. There was even one with the two of them leaning across the table, meeting in the middle, and sharing a hug. Yet, and still, none of those pictures hurt him as deeply as the last set. These were not extravagant or flashy like the others. No, there were 3 pictures of her in a simple outfit: white shorts, a t-shirt, and some sandals. In the bikini pictures, she and her lover were enjoying time by the pool. A couple had her and this guy sitting in a lounge chair. He was leaning back, and she was sitting between his legs, laying back into him. Even though the shots were just frozen moments in time, Justin could see how much she was enjoying whatever they were talking about. The smile on her face was either in mid-laugh or just permanently there due to her loving the company she was with. The cocktail dress pictures seemed to be where she was having the most fun. Dancing, drinking, more laughter, and then eating at what looked like an expensive restaurant. But those final 3 photos are what did him. They were taken from behind, but Justin could tell that this was the same couple from the others. He knew Rochelle's body shape from anywhere, the curve of her neck, even her ponytail. The couple in these photos walked side by side, hand in hand. In 2 of them, she was turned and looking in his direction. In the final one, she was leaning her head on his shoulder. Never before had he felt so much pain. It was like his stomach hollowed out and everything inside of him was replaced with acid. It was an empty yet burning sensation that made him feel like this couldn't be real. Only it was. His breath quickened. His heart raced. He felt like he was dying. It didn't take him long to realize these were the symptoms of a panic attack, the same he used to suffer through as a kid after his parents divorced. Divorce. Divorce. Divorce, 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 divorce. He had to pull it together. He had to get his breathing under control. He had to fight the urge to jump out of the 8th floor of this building. It took him about 10 minutes. 10 minutes of panic, of rage, of despondent hopelessness before he pulled out his cell phone and called Hannah. She answered on the second ring, like she was expecting this call. She didn't even say hi when she picked up. Her first words were, "Did you see them?" "What do you think?" He snapped back angrily. There was a pause between them until he asked, "Is this real, or are you just messing with me to get back at me?" Hannah snorted at that, like the mere question offended her. "Of course this is real. You know me, probably better than any other person. Would I make something like this up?" He didn't answer that. He didn't have to, because her rhetorical question went without saying. Instead, he asked, "When were these taken?" "Last week." "What the heck?" he thought. Aloud, he asked, "Where?" "On a cruise ship. Though some were taken when the ship pulled into Barbados." "A cruise ship? In Barbados? With another man? What on earth was going on? How can she be on a cruise when she's at a conference in Memphis? None of this makes any sense," he said, though the words falling from his lips felt empty. Even as he said them, he thought to himself, "Justin, you're an idiot." "When was the last time you talked to her?" Hannah asked. She called me a couple nights ago. We talked for about 10 minutes. Probably because the ship pulled into a port at Barbados a few days ago. It's gone back out now." Justin's brain started working overtime to put together these pieces. Rochelle's job sending her out of town wasn't anything new. However, these trips had been more frequent lately, and for longer periods of time. What was once a couple days now took a week or 2. As for her calling, that was something she used to do every night when she was away. She always said she missed him and just wanted to hear his voice before she went to sleep. But lately, he'd be lucky if he got 3 phone calls the entire time. Come to think of it, the phone call the other day seemed a bit odd. She did her usual checking in thing, but there was a complete lack of emotion from her, like she was distractedly talking to him while trying to do something else. She asked all the questions: "How was your day? How are things at work? What did you eat today?" But it was like she was checking things off on a list. He doubted she even heard his answers. Of course, he didn't notice it at the time because he was so preoccupied with figuring this project out without Hannah's help. He was kind of glad to get off the phone because when she called, he was right in the middle of a few tasks. But now, looking back, he could see that she couldn't have cared less. "Man, Hannah." "Yeah," she said emotionlessly. Then, with a bit of sarcasm, she added, "Trust me, I know how you feel." The swirling anger that was raging inside of Justin suddenly had a place to go. Here it was that his life was completely falling apart. His job was in jeopardy. His marriage was on life support. The fact that some part of Hannah was enjoying this sent him over the edge. "You know what, Hannah? Forget you? Forget me?" "Yeah," he bellowed. "Forget you." She should have expected a visceral reaction. She probably would have from anyone else on the planet. But she and Justin had never shared a harsh word between them. Even when they disagreed to the point of shouting over each other, their words were never harsh. Justin continued, "I've known Rochelle for 5 years. We've been married for 3. You think that her cheating on me is on the same level as Chris treating you like a friend with benefits for 6 months? That just shows how full of yourself you really are." She tried to cut in, but Justin wasn't finished yet. He was just getting started. "For the record, I warned you about dating him. I told you it was a bad idea. You've had tons of men falling over themselves over you, but you picked the one jerk out the bunch. That's on you, not me. Secondly, what you wanted me to do was unethical on so many levels. You wanted me to open myself up to a lawsuit because some jerk hurt your little feelings. You really expected that because once again you are full of yourself. Thirdly, you quit on me right when you knew it would hurt not only me, but the rest of the group the most. If this project fails, we will all be out of a job. Not just Chris, not just me, all of us. But you don't care because you've reverted back to acting childish. So you know what? You win. Congratulations, you got your revenge. My awful wife is cheating on me, and you got to drop the whole mess in my lap for your entertainment. Now go gloat somewhere else and get off my phone." Hannah could do nothing more than breathe angrily on the other end of the call. She wanted to scream at him, to laugh at his calamity, to call him all sorts of names. But before she could do any of that, the line was dead. Justin was gone. It had been 2 days since Justin and Hannah's big fight, and he was still trying to process it all. He felt betrayed, not only by his wife's actions but also by one of his closest friends. After hanging up on Hannah, Justin immediately began calling Rochelle repeatedly, but she didn't answer. He grew more and more anxious, barely getting any sleep that night for fear of missing her call. The next few days were filled with unsuccessful attempts to contact Rochelle. He left voicemails and sent texts, even calling her workplace to inquire about the conference she claimed to be attending. To his surprise, they informed him that there was no such conference in Memphis, and Rochelle hadn't been sent on any conferences in the past year. Justin's anxiety only intensified at this revelation. All he wanted was to hear something from Rochelle, anything to provide even the slightest explanation. In his imagination, he wished for a conversation where she scolded him for doubting her fidelity while expressing her love for him. But reality set in when Justin saw the pictures. His anger replaced his delusion. He was angry at Rochelle for cheating, angry at himself for overlooking the signs, and furious at Hannah for revealing the truth in such a harsh way. Justin was simply mad at the world. But with anger came questions. Who was this man Rochelle was with? Was he someone from her work or her past? Did she have feelings for him? Was she planning on leaving Justin for this guy? Then darker thoughts emerged. Each question drove him closer to madness. Not knowing the truth was agonizing. Without answers, his mind filled in the gaps with the worst possibilities. Over the next few days, these scenes haunted Justin's mind, interrupting his work and consuming his thoughts. Late one night, Hannah called him. Justin was in bed with his laptop, unable to tear himself away from work. Answering the phone, he barked at Hannah, expecting her to continue reveling in his pain. But her response caught him off guard. "I was wrong," Hannah said softly, her voice quivering with emotion. "I let my emotions cloud my judgment, and I acted immaturely. I'm supposed to be better than this." Hannah had a lot of time to reflect after their heated argument. Justin's words hurt her deeply, as she truly valued his opinion. She had forgotten all of that in the heat of her anger towards him. Realizing she had lost his respect weighed heavily on her heart. Silence followed as Justin absorbed her words. Hannah's pleading voice broke the silence, urging him to respond in any way. "I don't know what to say," Justin admitted, feeling conflicted. "Just say something, anything," Hannah begged. Taking a moment to collect his thoughts, Justin managed to express his feelings in 4 simple words. "You hurt me, Hannah." To his surprise, those words stung even more than his previous angry outbursts. "I know," Hannah responded, acknowledging the pain she had caused. "But I want you to know that I love you. You're like a big brother to me." Hearing the sincerity in her voice, a part of Justin's heart began to thaw. Deep down, he knew that Hannah didn't hate him. She was just reacting to her own hurt. I love you too, Justin reluctantly admitted. But sometimes you can be really mean. Hana sighed, accepting his criticism. I know. There was a moment's pause between them, almost like the words that were floating in the air had to settle. Hana sniffled. Justin sighed. I will say this about you, he said finally. When Hurricane Hana hits you, it leaves no survivors. The tone of his voice didn't have the angry bite in it anymore. In fact, there was a bit of morbid admiration and humor. The vibe change made Hana laugh from relief. Oh my gosh, don't say that. I'm not a force of nature. There was another pause. Then they abruptly burst out laughing together. This was an inside joke between them. The ironic truth of the matter was, the term force of nature was often the very phrase people used to describe her. She used to take this as a compliment. Now, she wasn't so sure. How can you even stand me? She asked, her tone humored but self-deprecating. I didn't realize I was such a pain. It's part of your charm. Without it, you'd be ordinary, just like everyone else. And one thing Hana will always be is extraordinary. Of all the compliments that Justin had given her over the years, that one was the best. Thank you. It felt so good airing everything out like this. The two of them had never really had a disagreement this massive before. But this bonding moment was almost worth it, kind of like that beautiful rainbow after a heavy storm. But the storm wasn't over yet, at least not for Justin. It was apparent when Hana took a serious note and asked, so how you holding up? You know, with the whole Rochelle thing? Maybe it was the sudden change of vibe, or even this new bond that made him feel so vulnerable. But her asking him that question broke the dam around his feelings. Everything he'd been holding inside suddenly burst open. He broke down and cried. And not a normal cry, either. Deep sobs, like a lonely soul mourning the loss of a loved one. Never before had this happened to him. He wasn't some emotional guy. He didn't get misty-eyed at movies. He didn't swoon over puppies or babies. But here he was, sobbing like his world was ending. And he couldn't stop. I don't know what I'm doing, he blubbered. Everything is falling apart. I'm failing at work, I'm failing at my marriage. I used to think I had it all. Now, all I have is an empty house and an office full of problems. No one was supposed to see this side of him. He was the guy who always kept it together. But right now it seemed like he was being punished for all his weaknesses at the same time. His neglect of his wife, his laid-back style of management, all of it had come back to bite him. That's what success does. It hides the weaknesses. No one cares about them when you're winning. It's only when the losses come that people want to criticize you for them. Hana just sat there and listened, knowing the huge part she played in this breakdown. There had never been actions that she regretted more. She vowed to herself that she would make this right. Justin would not suffer this alone. She didn't mind what she had to do. She would see him through this. Suddenly, all the nonsense with Chris seemed so small and insignificant. We can figure it all out, Hana said, comfortingly. Then, as if testing the waters, she added, maybe tomorrow. At the office? Justin almost didn't hear that part. When the words finally registered, he gasped. Wait, what? You're coming back? Hearing the excitement in his voice made Hana feel better. She half expected him to tell her to go away for leaving him in the first place. Yeah, I mean if I'm not fired. Fired? You kidding me? He said excitedly. I never even turned in your 2 weeks' notice. As far as anyone else is concerned, you're on vacation. She knew that was a lie. She personally told HR she was quitting, but she also knew that Justin would smooth all that out. The two of them talked more about the tough situation she was walking into. This conversation felt more familiar to the two of them. It felt good. Having Hana by his side felt right. Things seemed a little less bleak. Right before they were about to hang up to get some sleep, Justin asked the question he'd been dying to. Sue, be honest. How the heck did you manage to get pictures of Rochelle on a cruise halfway across the world? Do you just have spies all over the globe waiting to do your bidding? That got an all-out laugh from her. Who do you think I am? The CIA? I'm not sure if I'm flattered or offended by you thinking that I could set your wife up from thousands of miles away. There was a pause before Justin asked with a raised eyebrow, well, did you? No, she said, howling in laughter. The truth is way simpler than that, and a little embarrassing, looking back at it. I'm listening. So, Hana told her story. When she and Chris began dating, she was so smitten. She thought it would be great to go on a romantic cruise with him. She found out that she could open an account with the cruise line of her choice and just pay into it. The more money she put into it, the better the accommodations would be once she decided to cash in. So she did that. She chose a ship, set a goal of how much she wanted to spend, and began putting money into her account. She was waiting for the right time to surprise her boyfriend. Then things went wrong. When Hannah impulsively put her 2 weeks' notice in, she had to get away. Away from Chris, from Justin, from the embarrassing way people now looked at her at the office, all of it. She'd heard what everyone was saying behind her back. She went from being the most respected person on the team to the bitter, upset ex who couldn't let go. So she used all the money she put down and bought a ticket on the very next cruise leaving out. There was an open spot, which was fortunate considering how last minute it was. Imagine the odds. She gets one of the last spots at the last minute on a cruise that just happened to be the one Rochelle was on with her romantic partner that Justin knew nothing about. It's one of those coincidental situations that's so great that you'd have thought the gods planned this out. She continued with her story. There I was, sitting in one of the clubs on the ship, getting myself together and being all mopey. It seemed like everyone around me was with someone, which I guess was true considering the fact that it was supposed to be a romantic cruise for two. Yeah, Justin agreed, half joking, half giving condolences. Anyways, I was looking at all the happy couples when I saw this woman who looked like Rochelle. Only it couldn't be because she was in Memphis. I remember you telling me about her conference. Besides that, this woman was with a man, and Rochelle was happily married to you. So obviously it wasn't her. Obviously. Justin repeated sarcastically as a sick feeling swarmed his stomach. They were dancing, practically joined at the hip on the dance floor. The more I watched them, the more it looked like Rochelle. But it was dark, lights were flashing, and I still could have been wrong. So I started taking pictures. I figured I could get one that would let me be sure. That's where you got the club pictures from. Justin cut in, putting pieces together. Right. I got a good one of her face, and I was certain it was her. So I sort of followed her around, taking pictures and tracking her movements. You just followed her around? Like some private investigator. Pretty much. She admitted with a chuckle. What else did I have to do? It's not like I was busy cuddling with my man. And it wasn't that hard either. They weren't exactly hiding. Why would they have to hide? Justin thought bitterly. It's not like they needed to be secretive. His mind wandered back to those pictures. The dress. Them walking on the beach. It was evident. Of the entire bunch, the ones on the beach hurt the most. What about the ones on the beach, he asked. The ones where she was wearing those white shorts. Yeah, Hannah said, her mind recalling. She cringed thinking about the romantic scene before her as she took those pictures. They were taken in Barbados. The ship stopped there for a few days. We got to go out in town. By then, my trip was kind of ruined. I wasn't having any fun. I was sad and lonely. Stalking your wife gave me something to do, but watching them being a couple was hard for obvious reasons. In the end, I just wanted to come home and sleep in my own bed. Yeah, Justin agreed, taking a gulp. I can imagine. Hannah sighed sadly. She could practically hear his heart breaking over the phone. Finishing her story up, she said, So, I informed the crew that I wasn't returning to the ship. I got my things, got a hotel room in town, and I took a flight out the next day. The ship left without me. Even amongst his sadness, Justin couldn't help but be impressed with her determination. The high-quality shots she got of his wife and her lover would make any investigator jealous. Curiously, he asked, how did you do all that without being noticed? Rochelle knows what you look like. Were you popping up out of trash cans to take those pictures? This made Hannah laugh. Her tone went mysterious as she said, Akate. Yeah, right. I forget that you haven't seen me in a bit, huh? You couldn't have changed that much. It's only been a couple of weeks. We'll see if you say that tomorrow. And Justin? Yeah? Be nice? The moment Hannah walked in, Justin could do nothing but drop his jaw. Her hair, her clothes, everything about her was completely different. Hannah was half Asian, half white. She inherited her mom's almond-shaped eyes, her long, jet-black hair, and her coconut skin tone. The old Hannah wore that long hair in a bun atop her head to keep it out of her face. But that was gone. Now, her hair was shoulder-length and blonde with brown streaks. She also had bangs. The way it framed her face added roundness to it. Then there were her clothes. Hana's old style wasn't exactly drab, but she'd never win any fashion contests. Her clothes, like everything else in her life, was efficient. A sensible blouse, some fitted slacks, and wedged heels. Now, she looked like a fashionable sorority sister on her way to impress a professor. A short skirt that hugged her hips, a vest that was being worn as a shirt, heeled boots that came up to her knees, and patterned tights. No wonder Rochelle didn't recognize her. He could barely match this woman to the Hana he knew. What the heck, Hana? She covered her face like she was embarrassed. Stop gawking at me. You're making me self-conscious. I'm not. It's just that you look different. Hana didn't know if he meant it as a compliment or not. Truthfully, it was a bit of both. Did she look attractive? Yes. But did it detract from her amazing persona? Yes. This makeover was something completely spontaneous, which was the opposite of how she did things. To someone who likes to be in control, feeling out of control is the worst nightmare. And that's how she felt lately. With everything in her life spinning into chaos, she felt the need to take something back. That's what the cruise was about. This makeover was another part of it. It was a chance to restart herself, to become someone else, even if it was temporary. I know. I look like a silly doll, she said, waving him off. Now can we move on? We have business to discuss. Yes, ma'am. The rest of the team seemed just as shocked by Hana's new look as Justin. Attractive Hana was a person you couldn't take your eyes off. She looked like a model that had been given a makeover. With the team at full strength again, they got to work. They were now fully formed into a monster-slaying machine like Voltron. Soon, Hana's makeover faded from notice. Justin put all their challenges on the table, and they hashed them out. Once a plan was formed, Justin delegated various tasks to the team members. Contractors wanting a better contract? Hana knew them best. Chris knew numbers. He needed them both on it. Truckers planning to strike? He put his best information guys on it, gathering intel on alternate suppliers who could do last-minute deliveries. Land disputes? Get the lawyers on it to figure out who they needed to pay and who needed to be dealt with. Justin watched his team explode out the gates, moving with such urgency that it filled him with pride. He himself started contacting his own bosses, giving them updates on the plans moving forward. He did feel a sense of ambivalence putting Hana and Chris together. Yes, they made the best team, but considering how things went down, it made him nervous. More on that note, he couldn't help but notice that Chris seemed more interested in this version of Hana. His eyes lingered when he looked at her. He smiled alluringly when he talked to her. It was a complete shift from how they were before. When Hana was trying to get his attention, he seemed more aloof. She was constantly trying to get him to notice her. Now, a shift had occurred in their dynamic. Justin made a mental note to keep an eye on that. He didn't want the fragile chemistry of his team to be broken again. But if Hana was going to be a part of his team, she and Chris would have to be able to work together. Things stayed busy all day. The first time he had a moment alone with Hana was at about 8 p.m. when everyone else was gone. She was sitting at the desk, looking at his laptop. He was hovering over her shoulder. "Glad to have you back," he said, beaming with pride as the two of them went over all the progress they made in a single day. "You better be." He chuckled at that. Then, trying to sound casual, he said, "So, you and Chris worked well together?" Hana shrugged. "Yeah, we got it done, I guess." Justin nodded, then curiously asked, "Did he say anything about, the new you?" She smacked her lips dismissively. "He tried to talk to me. I think he wanted to apologize or something. I don't know." "Really? What did he say?" She gave another shrug. "Nothing. I didn't give him the chance. We had too much to do and I didn't have time for all that. I just handed him the contracts and told him to get busy crunching numbers so I could know what I was working with." "Ouch. Brutal," Justin said with boisterous laughter. Whatever, Hana was putting on a brave face, but there was still pain beneath the surface. Even still, as Justin was both impressed and relieved at how well she was holding it together. Not many people could work closely with the person who broke their heart. As he sat there, something else occurred to him, something he'd been meaning to say. "Hey, Hana? Yeah? I just wanted to say how sorry I am. For not having your back before." Even though she was facing away from him, he could see the effect that had. Her fingers stopped moving over the mouse pad. She stiffened up and sat frozen in her seat, looking straight ahead. He continued. Even though what you did was wrong, I understand why you did it. And it worked, really. Betrayal hurts. But not having anyone in your corner makes it feel 10 times worse. You showed me that. I was thinking like a boss and trying to keep the status quo going. But what you needed was a friend in your corner. And I failed you on both fronts. Hana gulped, then nodded. Still, she looked straight ahead, unable to look at him. Finally, in a voice choked with emotion, she simply said, "Thank you." He gently put his hand on her shoulder and gave it a squeeze. In return, she placed her hand on top of his. This moment was just too much intensity, too much realness. Justin felt the urge to lighten it up. Looking down at her hand, he cracked a smile. He couldn't hide the humor he felt at seeing that her new glow-up included a manicure, complete with painted nails. It was official. Hana had made the complete transformation from an all-businesswoman to a fashionable doll, almost overnight. "Wow. You really did change," he said with a snicker. "Hair, clothes, and now nails. You really are a doll." "Shut up." Hana squealed as she snatched her hand away and playfully hit him on the arm. "You're such a goofball." By the time the week was over, things at the office were calmer. They still had a ways to go, but the chaos was now more controlled. Soon, this project would be over, and Justin could figure out what he was going to do with the shambles of his marriage. At least, that's what the plan was. But life has a way of throwing unexpected punches. As Justin pulled into his driveway on this particular night, his breath caught in his throat. He looked up at his house and saw that the lights were on. This was significant because since Rochelle left, he had 2 weeks of coming home to a dark house. He always turned off all the lights. It was a habit burned into him from his childhood. Rochelle, however, always turned on the lights. She didn't grow up with a father screaming about the light bill. A private joke between her and Justin was he could mark her journey throughout the house by seeing which lights were on. And now, his house was lit up like Christmas. He wasn't ready for this. He'd spent the last few days dreaming of how this confrontation was going to go. He was going to confront her with the pictures Hana took. He was going to talk to her with the expertise of an FBI operative. He was going to make his points until she was nothing more than a blubbering mess. But now all that preparation was gone. He pulled out his phone and found the number he wanted to call. It was number 2 in his favorites, right beneath Rochelle. "What's up, Jay?" Hana answered. "She's here." "What?" "Rochelle, she's here. In the house." Hana heard the panic in his voice. She could feel the overwhelming surge of emotions through the phone. She had to settle him down. Calmly, she said, "It's going to be okay, Jay. You can do this. All you got to do is—" "No, I can't do this," he interrupted. All the anger is rushing back. "I keep seeing her and that jerk together, and I want to hit something. I don't know how I'll react if I go in there right now." A silhouette walked across one of the windows covered with closed blinds. That made him panic even more. All she had to do was slip one open and peek outside. She'd see that he was here. Then he'd be forced to confront her. Like a coward, he put the car in reverse and backed out of there. "What's going on?" Hana asked when she noticed the subtle changes in background noise. "I'm driving. I had to get out of there." "Good. Good," she said calmly. "Where are you going?" "I don't know." There was a pause before she said, "Come over to my place." "What? Spend the night here? You can sleep in my guest room." "What? No. I can't do that." "Why not?" "Because," he said, his mind racing with all the reasons why that was the worst idea. "Rochelle already thinks we're having an affair. Me staying the night there will only confirm her suspicions." "Right. We wouldn't want poor Rochelle to think that her husband is being unfaithful." Her sarcasm cut through the fog that clouded his head. He felt himself calming down, thinking more rationally. "You're right," he conceded. "Of course I am. Now hurry up. I'm tired and I don't want to be waiting up all night for you. I'll see you when you get here, Jay." "Okay. See you in a bit." Rochelle looked at the digital clock on the nightstand. It was getting a bit late, even for Justin. Where was he? She desperately had to talk to him. These 2 weeks away revealed some things to her, things she needed to speak with Justin about. But as usual, he wasn't here. He was probably still at the office. With her. That thought would have caused a rush of anger in Rochelle 2 weeks ago. But now, all she felt was sad. The vibe around her was different than before. Something inside of her had changed. How did Rochelle end up here? Travis was her ex. Off again, on again lover. Not a boyfriend per se, but someone she once cared for quite deeply. There was a time when she even thought she loved him. This was way before Justin. They met 7 years ago at one of the conventions that her job occasionally sends her to. Travis was one of the premier speakers. These conventions were a new thing to her. She had so much to learn, and she wanted to soak up all the information. So, as with all new students eager to be taught, she sat in the front row. From the moment Travis got up on that stage, she was mesmerized. Not just by his looks, but his presence. He commanded the room and the audience from the moment he introduced himself. The stage was his, and what he had to say was probably the most important thing you learned this entire weekend. At least that's what it felt like. Of course, Travis noticed Rochelle. How could he not? Her pencil skirt and matching jacket were very professional, yet it still managed to give appreciation to her curves. But the best part of her were those eyes. They were expressive, they were piercing, and they looked at him from the audience filled with admiration. She wanted him. He knew, even before speaking to her, that he was going to make a strong connection with her that night. She made it a point to meet him after everything was over, and of course their chemistry was palpable. The attraction was high, they enjoyed each other's company, and they had a lot of the same hobbies. They had dinner that night. Rochelle was hooked. She could listen to this man talk for hours. He was so passionate about his work, about life in general. Just being around him motivated her to want more for herself. And Travis was right. He did make a strong connection with her that night. And the next morning, they had a deep and powerful conversation. What started out as a weekend friendship became a 2-year connection. They couldn't stay away from each other. But as much as the sparks flew between them, things never really panned out. They were never an official couple. But that wasn't from a lack of trying on Rochelle's part. She'd have done anything to be his partner. In fact, she did everything. She went to every conference her job allowed her to because she knew he'd be there. She took vacation to travel to him when she could. She bought him plane tickets to come see her. Travis could have been the perfect friend. He was sweet. He was supportive. He remembered her birthdays and always sent gifts. He always complimented her and noticed the little things. "You've changed your hair. I like it. That perfume smells amazing. Wow, you've lost weight. You look great." Travis always made her feel beautiful. When they were together, she felt like the only person in the world. The problem is the perfect friend doesn't exist. It's an illusion. Anyone can be a perfect friend for a time. And that's just what Travis was, the perfect, short-time friend. The other side of Travis was this: as attentive as he was when they were together, he was equally as inattentive when they weren't. Travis wasn't in a place to share a life with anyone. His life was basically lived in hotel rooms, going from city to city. He was always on the road, going from one conference to another. Even when he was at home, he was still almost 250 miles away. Rochelle volunteered to go to every conference she could, just to be with him. She took vacation to fly up to see him wherever he was. She always tried to find ways to be near him. The problem was, he didn't reciprocate. His first love was what he was doing. His passion was his job, and she came before all others. Each time he'd become distant, she swore it was the last. But Travis was like a favorite hobby. You're never truly over it. No matter how time-consuming it is, or how hard it is to let go, after a while you begin to desire it again. Times of stress, small memories, or even watching someone else do it can trigger the urge to just do it again. Sooner or later, you end up taking it up again. That was their pattern: deep friendship, then distance. Rinse and repeat. She and Travis may never be true friends, but having him in her life was better than being alone. Anytime she was ever feeling lonely, or just needed to feel appreciated and loved, she could call him. He was a band-aid at best, but he had a positive effect on her. Eventually, she realized she needed more. She didn't want a temporary fix. She wanted something real. She wanted a true partnership. Then, she met Justin. It wasn't apparent in the beginning, but time told the truth. The type of person Rochelle was attracted to was intelligent, confident, charming, successful, passionate about his job, able to hold interesting conversations, but emotionally unavailable. She could listen to Justin talk all day, just as she could Travis. The two of them shared a lot of similarities. But Justin was here, not traveling around the country. He was able to make time for her because she was important, at least in the beginning. But time told the truth. Being with Justin helped her move on from Travis. When she was with Justin, she didn't feel that pull towards Travis. He never stopped trying to reconnect with her, but she no longer wanted a half-hearted friendship. She had a guy who wanted what she wanted, and he was every bit as intellectually stimulating as Travis was. The more serious she and Justin got, the more Travis' attempts to rekindle something frustrated her. It used to flatter her. Now it just made her angry. He had his chance and blew it. She moved on. Finally, she was happy. She had a great job. She had a great guy who was successful. She had a great life. She had it all. It was time for Travis to do the same. Even still, she couldn't help but feel like there was a missing piece. She couldn't quite figure out what it was. Justin loved her, and she knew that, but it always felt like he was holding back. And then she met Hannah. It was at a Christmas party that Justin's company was throwing. They were in their first year of marriage. She'd never attended these parties with Justin before, because Justin never went. But this year, he was getting special recognition all the stuff he and his team were doing. So, he had to be there. Rochelle was introduced to all of Justin's team. She played the role of the supportive wife, standing next to her man and beaming with pride at his accomplishments. She charmed them with her beauty and personality. She laughed and giggled at the funny office stories they told about each other as they each tried to impress her. It was nice and all, but she found herself pretending to be more interested than she really was. But Hannah was different. That much was evident, even from the start. She was younger than the rest, and the only woman. You would think this dynamic would put her at a disadvantage among her peers, but somehow it didn't. It was clear who was the leader in this group. They respected her words as much as they respected Justin's. Rochelle was drawn to Hannah for the same reason she was drawn to Justin. At that time, it wasn't apparent how much the similarities between her and her husband would pose a threat to her marriage. It was just refreshing to see a woman so young, yet so much in control of her environment that she could swim effortlessly in a sea of accomplished men and hold her own. But that likability wouldn't last long. Eventually, the time came to recognize Justin. The head honcho got up on the mic and said a 10-minute speech about how Justin was the model project manager, how much of a leader he was, how great his team was doing, and how he should be the example of how to get it done. The entire room exploded with applause, and she was so proud of her husband. But then, it was Justin's turn to speak. He took the mic with all the confidence of a man who owned the world, smiled out at the sea of people who came here to honor him, and then called Hannah up to the stage to stand next to him. Not the entire team, just Hannah. He then talked about how she was the backbone of his team, how invaluable she was, and how none of this was possible without her. He even admitted that she was more knowledgeable than him. This woman radiated with joy as her husband showered her with praise. Standing beside him, she admired him like a hero, reminiscent of how Rochelle used to look at Travis. She blushed with happiness as he spoke about her, swooning with every word. But what bothered her was how he looked at Hannah. His eyes were solely focused on her, disregarding the crowd of over 150 people who came to celebrate him. He spoke directly to Hannah, as if no one else was present. The way he adored her was unlike anything Rochelle had seen before. Even she, his wife of 1 year, didn't receive that level of admiration and reverence. Rochelle couldn't ignore this. She couldn't unsee what she witnessed up there. And then it started to strike her how much time Justin spent at work. It was one thing for work to take up most of his time, but it was another for his job to be personified in a woman who resembled a younger, female version of himself. From then on, Rochelle felt like Hannah's shadow loomed large over her marriage. Whether Hannah was in the room or just a phone call away, Justin's attention was always fully focused on her, and even that had become infrequent. Rochelle started feeling like a third wheel in her own marriage. She was made to feel like the mistress, the one who had to stay in the background. She felt forced to take a backseat to his work partner. That loneliness consumed her, filling her with bitterness. Every missed date, every phone call, every late-night arrival at home made her feel a little more heartbroken. Justin couldn't understand. He genuinely believed that nothing inappropriate was going on between him and Hannah. He never even considered having an affair with her. To him, she was just a partner, someone who shared his ambition and dedication to success. Yes, he admired Hannah, but it was the same admiration he would have for a male counterpart who was equally impressive. There was no desire involved. He didn't want to be with her, and he knew Hannah felt the same way. So Rochelle's claims that Hannah was interfering with their marriage fell on deaf ears. It seemed ridiculous to even think about. The divide between them grew wider. Rochelle found herself thinking about Travis more and more. Despite cutting him out of her life, and not speaking to him for years, she couldn't help but wonder about him. How was he doing? Was he in a relationship? Did he still work for the company? Had he changed at all? Curiosity got the best of her, and she silently started stalking his social media. She wanted to know what he had been up to since they last saw each other. Travis still looked as handsome as ever. He still pursued the same hobbies and had the same interests. His social media may have evolved with the times, but it still held traces of their past together. One thing stood out to Rochelle. There were no photos of any new woman in Travis's life. Surprisingly, there were still plenty of photos of her. This surprised her. She expected him to have moved on with someone else by now. Another young woman who could replace her in his heart. He was definitely an eligible bachelor. Over the next few weeks, checking Travis's social media became a daily habit for Rochelle. In her free moments, whether at work or at home waiting for Justin, she would peek into his life. It started innocently, but soon it escalated to more. Eventually, she started liking his posts. She convinced herself that it wasn't an attempt to get his attention, but deep down, she wondered if he ever noticed her among all his friends and followers. And he did. Out of the blue, she received a message from Travis. It was a simple hi. That was it, nothing flirtatious or extravagant. Of course, she responded. It would have been rude not to. Soon, they were exchanging messages on a daily basis, catching up like old friends. When he asked if he could call her, Rochelle's stomach flipped. She knew this was crossing a line into dangerous territory. But she did it anyway, telling herself it was nothing more than talking to an old friend. Then came the day when Travis would be in a neighboring town for a conference. He wanted to see her. After much internal debate, she agreed. Sitting in the audience, watching Travis on stage, Rochelle felt like she was stepping back in time. Travis felt the same way when he saw her in the audience, looking up at him with her legs crossed. She hadn't aged a day. In fact, she looked even more stunning now. The innocence in her eyes had transformed into maturity and confidence that was both attractive and intimidating. But even so, Travis knew. He saw it in her eyes, the way she still hung onto his every word. The next morning, they shared breakfast in his hotel room. They spent time together, marking the second time Rochelle had been unfaithful to her husband. Their affair continued the next day, right before she had to return home to her real life. Rochelle felt an overwhelming sense of guilt during her plane ride back. She had done something she swore she would never do: cheat on her husband, repeatedly. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was how much she enjoyed it. It wasn't just about Travis's skills in bed. It was about the release she felt from all the pent-up frustration with Hannah. She relished not being in Hannah's shadow, and she loved feeling desired by another man. Strangely, she didn't feel the same rush of emotions that she used to feel for Travis. Despite what she was doing, she still loved her husband. She still wanted to make things work with Justin. She held on to hope that they would find their way back to one another. In this sense, Travis's reluctance to commit and his tendency to withdraw when things got a little too deep was perfect. It worked as a safety net. Rochelle never had to worry about him pressuring her to leave Justin. There would never be an ultimatum. They could enjoy each other's company as temporary lovers, and then Travis would maintain a safe distance. Or so she thought. What she didn't realize was how much Travis regretted losing her. He realized his mistake in letting her go only after seeing how much another man cherished her. While this affair was a fling for Rochelle, it was a second chance for Travis. He was determined to correct a terrible error. And so Rochelle continued her secret relationship with Travis, unbeknownst to her husband. They found ways to meet up at conferences and even took short vacations together. They engaged in phone conversations and sent flirtatious messages. But it wasn't enough for Travis. He wanted more. He suggested the idea of taking a luxurious cruise together. Rochelle initially hesitated. 2 weeks felt like a huge risk, much riskier than their weekend encounters that could be easily explained. Eventually, he managed to convince her. However, there was still the problem of her husband. There was no way he would believe her job would require her to be away for 2 weeks. Was it worth the risk? An unexpected conversation with Justin gave her the final push. It happened one morning a few weeks before the cruise. With Travis being so insistent on wanting to spend time with her, that made Justin's disinterest even more frustrating. Rochelle wanted him to want her, to be close with her after a long day at work and relieve all his stress through companionship. But with the way he just plopped into bed, the message was clear. So, the next morning, she was in a grumpy mood. As an act of passive aggression, she decided to test the waters by floating the idea of a 2-week conference. She just wanted to see how he would react. Just as she expected, he was suspicious. Honestly, though, she felt a strange sense of relief at that. A part of her wanted to be acknowledged. She wanted reassurance that he didn't need to get away from her. She told him, "Babe, I would love to just sit next to you and watch TV, or take a bath together, or even sit in the same room and read a book. I don't care what we do. I just want to be around you more." The two of them began to cuddle. She was affectionate towards him, enjoying his scent, feeling his skin against hers. She could feel how much he desired her presence. But then his phone rang, and who was on the other line? Just like that, she went back to playing second to his work partner. He couldn't escape fast enough. He rushed into the office, wanting to be by her side so they could conquer their tasks together. Hannah was Robin to his Batman. Rochelle was nothing more than Alfred. Her only role was to keep things organized and make sure that he had a home to come back to. Forget that. As she stormed out of the room, her thumb was already searching for Travis's phone number. By the time she sat in the driver's seat of her car, she was telling Travis how excited she was about their trip. Now, reflecting on everything, that decision to run away didn't seem so empowering. It was a huge mistake in so many ways. It was supposed to be a dream come true. And for the first week and a half, it was. She and Travis did all the things a couple would do. They went dancing. They had a blast. They tried their luck in the casinos. It was so much fun. But then, things became too complicated. They got too close. In Barbados, the two of them took a stroll on the beach. It was beautiful. It was romantic. It was perfect. Rochelle felt a peace she hadn't felt in a while. And that's when Travis did the one thing he wasn't supposed to. As she leaned her head on his shoulder, taking in the beautiful sunset, he admitted his true feelings for her. He loved her and had been for a while. He regretted letting her go and wanted another shot at happiness with her. He believed it was destiny giving them a second chance. Then he asked her to leave her husband. The two of them got into a huge argument. Why did he have to ruin everything? Why couldn't he be like he was before? Why would he complicate something that was supposed to be so simple? That was the end for Rochelle and Travis. Ironically enough, that final picture that Hannah took, the one with the two of them strolling on the beach holding hands with her head leaning on his shoulder, was the final picture of them as a happy couple. That picture was the most painful for Justin to see, because it was the one that looked like she was moving on to another man. But in fate's twisted sense of humor, it was the one that ended everything for his wife and her affair partner. She and Travis weren't some couple enjoying a trip. They were two people trying to change their history, but in different ways. He was trying to rewrite the past. She was trying to rewrite the present by using Travis's affection to fill the void in her marriage. Rochelle called Justin from Barbados. She needed to hear his voice. She needed to feel his love. She needed to know if her marriage was worth fighting for. But he was distracted. Something important was happening at work. And he couldn't find the time for a serious conversation with her. Even after a week and a half of not talking to her, he didn't seem to miss her at all. That shattered her. From then on, the trip was no longer enjoyable. It was sad. Travis slept on the couch. They ate separately. She went to the pool alone while he watched movies in the room. When they finally arrived home, they didn't even share a hug goodbye. They hugged briefly, like two people who used to be close but were now strangers. Then they went their separate ways. And now, being back in the home she shared with her husband, everything felt so empty. For the first time, Rochelle looked around her and realized that she was unhappy here. Travis may have been fake, but he showed her what she truly desired from a husband. She wanted what Travis pretended to give her. She wanted Justin to genuinely want to do those things with her. But he wouldn't. Maybe he couldn't. Whatever the reason, she realized that what she needed from him wasn't something he was willing to give. And now, she was waiting for him to return home. They needed to talk. Not about Hannah or his job or how much he was neglecting her, but about where they went from here. But as the clock continued ticking and Justin still wasn't there, Rochelle grew even sadder. An ominous realization struck her. He knew about her affair. She didn't know how he knew, but she was certain of it. And her marriage was truly over. She wasn't just a sad woman crying. She was grieving the death of her marriage.